Hello, everyone. Welcome, welcome. It's so great to see you all. As you were all joining, let's just pop in the chat. We have a minute before we're going to get started. Let's just tell us who is a woman leader that you admire. When you think of Women's History Month, International Women's Day, just tell me who are you admiring right now? Tell us in the chat. And make sure that your little response is changed to everyone can see the chat, and that way everybody can see your answers. But who are you admiring right now? Tell us in the chat. I know Glennon Doyle, she's doing some great work. I agree. A woman I really admire right now is Reese Witherspoon. I love how she recognized that there was a shortage of women's stories in the media. And so she started her own company, Hello Sunshine, to tell more of women's stories. And she sold the company for like $1 billion. And so not only is she an amazing actress, but she saw a need and she created something. And now we have so many amazing shows. Jasmine Crockett, Kathy the Big election today. For those of you that are US based, there's a big Texas primary today. We've got Mel Robbins, Viola Davis, Condoleezza Rice. I admire my coworker. I love it. Brene Brown, there's no one right answer. So for those of you who are just joining, we're just popping in the chat as we're getting started today. Who is a woman leader that you admire? It can be somebody that you read about in a book. It can be somebody that you know. It can be somebody that is in pop culture. There's no one right answer, and there's no one right way to answer this question. So let's go ahead and let's get started because we are here to celebrate International Women's Day. And International Women's Day is actually on March 8th, but I like to hold this a little bit early because to be honest, we're here to celebrate, the whole Women's History Month. Here, let me go ahead and make this. I'm trying to talk and share at the same time. All right, perfect. Everybody can see this. Just drop me a yes in the chat. Make sure that our slides are all good. Awesome. Perfect. For those of you who don't know me, I just want to introduce myself because I think we have a lot of new folks on the call today that I love meeting all of you. My name is Kelly Thompson. I am an executive coach, especially for women leaders. I'm on a mission to help women advance to the rooms where decisions are made. I'm also the author of the critically acclaimed book, Closing the Confidence Gap, and I'm a speaker. I speak frequently at organizations or at women's leadership conferences on the topics of leading with clarity and confidence and getting more women to the rooms where decisions are made. And you can learn all about me all over the internet. So why are we here today? We are here in celebration of the 2026 International Women's Day theme, and March is Women's History Month. Every year, International Women's Day picks a different theme, and I feel like this year's theme was spot on. It's called Give to Gain. But the part that really stuck with me was this phrase right here. It's all about encouraging a mindset of generosity and collaboration. Let me just tell you that I have worked with and coached thousands of women, leaders, really. And this year, especially in the last 18 months with the rise of AI, people are constantly scrutinizing, is this real? Is this real? Tell me in the chat, have any of you ever done that in the last month? Where you've looked at something and you're like, is this real? Is this real or is this fake? And with us constantly scrutinizing what is real and what is fake, relationships, collaboration, generosity, authenticity is becoming so much more important. And so that's how I wanted to build on this year's theme, Closing the Confidence Gap, the power of women advancing together by giving you tools to build better networks, to foster more collaboration, and to cultivate better relationships. Because I'm going to share with you that there's a lot of data that supports that relationships are how you earn opportunities. It's how you advance your ideas. Because in a world where everyone is questioning, is this real or fake? Relationships matter more than ever right now. And I'm not the only person who is finding this out. In fact, Chief, which is a women's organization, and the Harris poll actually just conducted a survey. And what they found was that 90% of corporate women leaders right now agree that their network is their lifeline during an economic downturn. And right now, everything happening in the world feels really unstable. And so women are turning to their network, and 2/3 of them realize better brainstorming through their network. 94% of them are experiencing increased ambition. Because here's the thing, and I have some data to support this later. When we see other women doing things, it's like, oh, I could do that. Oh, I didn't know that was possible. Oh, you mean I can do that? I have permission for that? And it opens up a whole network of ambition for the rest of us. 93% of them find more opportunities. And I cannot understate this or overstate this enough. Y'all, when I'm working with clients, especially those clients that are looking for maybe their next career opportunity, they are not finding it on job boards. They are finding it through their network. Um, I love this, Taylor. You said you recently got asked if you were AI when you called a client, right? You're making my point. Everybody is suspicious right now. We're all in scrutiny mode. And so that's why these relationships and these networks are so important. They can make introductions, they can motivate us, they can support us. And so I'm going to tell some stories of some women that I really admire today in honor of International Women's Day and in honor of Women's History Month. And I want to actually start with the most recent one. Tell me in the chat, how many of you have ever heard of Reshma? I was actually first introduced to Reshma when I actually sat in a women's leadership conference several years ago in which she was a keynote speaker, because she had just created Girls Who Code. She had run for Congress, and as part of this endeavor had realized there's just not enough women in STEM, right? We need to teach young girls that coding is cool so that they are prepared and ready for more types of STEM jobs in the future. Well, then Reshma went on and she had children, and this was during the pandemic. And Reshma realized, oh my gosh, there is no support for working parents, let alone moms who carry the burden of this duty when they have children in the workplace. What is happening? And so she started this, it was called the Marshall Plan for Moms. It's now called Moms First. It's a community of over 1 million moms and mom supporters who are advocating for more support, mostly in the form of universal childcare, to help put women back into the workplace. Well, so the headline reads that this viral moment led to affordable childcare. And for those of you who don't know, when the presidential campaign was going on, she asked then candidate Trump what his plan was for support for moms and childcare. And, he didn't have a plan. Most of them didn't, right? And so he kind of stumbles. And so that moment went viral. And that caused the state of New York to become the first state to offer universal childcare, which is a huge win. But this article says it was her viral moment. But I'm going to argue that it was not her viral moment. It was her community. It was the community that she had built around Girls Who Code. It was the community that she built around Moms First. These 1 million people were helping write political leaders. They were helping champion initiatives. They were lobbying. They were advocating. Sometimes it makes it look like this person does it alone, but they don't. They do it inside a community. And I think one of the things that Reshma shows us is that when we can build a community around the change that we want to see, we have a lot more resilience for the long game. But the final thing I'll point out that stood out to me the most in the write-up, the Time write-up about Reshma, was that Reshma said that she wasn't born with like courage or some unique skill. She had to build the muscle. She built the muscle by being the daughter of immigrants, by running for Congress, by starting all of these communities. And so then when her time came, right, her muscle had been in use. And I think sometimes we think that like other women just kind of have the muscles or just know how to do it, but it's actually something that we build. And we build it by using it, by testing it, by challenging it, by stretching it. And sometimes it hurts afterwards if you've ever pushed your muscles a little bit. So now I have to ask you, if you had a little bit of a stronger confidence muscle, what would you do? If you're sitting at a computer, you can answer this in the chat. If you're sitting in a room with a lot of your colleagues, you can get your phone out, you can scan the QR code, and that way you can participate in this answer as well. And all answers that are scanned in are anonymous, doesn't matter where. But tell me, what would you do if you had a little more confidence? If you felt like maybe you had just a little bit more muscle to stretch? You would go for a leadership position in your company. What else? You would quit your corporate job. What else? I love it. I could be working in a field I studied for. I would start a podcast. I would write my book. I would take a risk on my job. I'd open my own consulting company. I'd ask my manager for a job elsewhere. Ask for the job I want. Just ask for what I want, right? Ooh, a neurodivergent sports community. I bet there's women on this call that would be like, where is this? And I will come join, drop the link. I would go into politics. Fun fact, I coach some I have coached some women in office, and I'm coaching for a woman running for office right now. And it is the most exciting and fulfilling thing because I agree we need more women running for office. I asked over 500 women this question when I was getting ready to write my book, Closing the Confidence Gap. And I heard a lot of answers like this. I heard answers like, I would ask my boss for a raise. I would pack my bag and leave. I would be more confident in my abilities. I would go back to school. I would ask for this project. I would run for office. I would start my own nonprofit. I would start my own business. All of these questions. And I want us to just pause for a moment. That if we all just practice that muscle that we all have and took one small step towards doing these things, like imagine the ripple effect. Imagine the ripple effect. And I also want you to start thinking about, with all of you having these goals, what sort of community, instead of feeling like you need to be a lone wolf, which is exhausting and it zaps your resilience, what sort of community could you build around this goal? And how could they help you? How could they make this more exciting? How could they make it easier? When I was asking, women about all of these goals, and as I was writing my book, and I spent so many years in corporate America in corporate HR and training that I just started to notice, like, why does it seem to be that men just seem more confident around these sort of things? Like they have an idea, and when they have the idea, they just do the thing, right? And women seem to hold back. Well, it turns out Wharton wanted to understand this too. And there was actually a study that they published called The Confidence Gap. I'm like, well, that's coincidence because I'm writing a book called Closing the Confidence Gap. So what Wharton did was they actually took a group of individuals and gave them a standardized test. They did not tell them how they did on the test, but how the participants thought they did on the test. They were supposed to go advocate their perceived performance to these hypothetical employers. So tell me in the chat, who do you think did a better job advocating for themselves and their perceived abilities, the men or the women? Tell me in the chat. Oh, you were so smart. It was the men. Yep. Men did great. I'm so smart. I did so good on the test. I'd be so great. I'd be so great here, right? Now tell me in the chat, who do you think did a little better on the test? The men or the women? Oh, yes, the women. I love the person who said, obviously, the women. The women did a little better on the test. So what the researchers at Wharton said was, well, maybe if we just start telling women that they did better, then their confidence will follow suit. And I actually wrote in my book, Closing the Confidence Gap, that's actually not going to cut it. We can't just start telling women, hey, you're smarter, and then expect their confidence to follow. To actually see more women showing up, using their full confidence muscles, we actually have to see more women in the rooms where decisions are made. And this is why community is so important. This is why communities produce more ambition. This is why when we come together as groups of women, we see what other women's goals are, and it motivates us to do the same, just like we did right now. The good news is it's trending about the same. McKinsey just did their Women in the Workplace report. And what they found for 2025 is that 29% of C-suite women are leaders. That's the same actually as 2024, although it is up from years prior. The broken rung is not quite as broken. They found for every 100 men that are promoted, about 93 women are promoted. But, that number teeters a little bit. It goes up and down. And so it's really that first rung of leadership where we start to see women opt out, or maybe their confidence hold them back, or some of the systemic or gender issues sometimes that maybe cause them not to be selected. And Jennifer, it's like I Venmo'd you money to say that, because this is expensive. And Jennifer just teed us up to why. Because we've all seen this stat. 60% of women will apply when they meet like 100% of the criteria of a job, where men are going to apply when they see 60%. So this is not a new statistic, but the reason why I have it up here is because I want to tell you my lived experience with it. I used to be in HR for years in organizations. And how I saw this play out was, let's say we would put a job on the posting board. A man would come into my office, call me, send me an email, and he'd be like, this job looks awesome. Who do I got to talk to? Right? It was just like, because he thought the job seemed interesting, he applied. That was his criteria. Okay. Whereas women would see the job and I would get a thoughtful email, or they'd schedule a meeting with me and they're like, oh, I've been waiting for this job to come open. This looks amazing, but I only meet like 9 of the 10 qualifications. Do you think I need to go back to school? And we were like, oh my gosh, no, please apply. Right? There was so much self-rejection out because women were evaluating themselves against criteria on a job description that I'm going to tell you a secret, folks. Being in HR, I wrote job descriptions and job postings for years. And that list of criteria was our best hope, best guess. Okay. Now, I'm not talking about healthcare where we have some minimum standards that we need to meet. We're not hiring unlicensed nurses. Please know that. Okay. But I'm talking about sitting down with the hiring manager and saying, okay, best case, what do we got? And every single hiring manager would say, but you know what, though? I'll relax on this because I want to hire the right person. Tell me in the chat, how many of you have ever hired someone that didn't meet all the criteria? Or you were hired and you didn't meet it because you were the right person with the right values? Tell me in the chat, has it ever happened to you? Yeah, it's happened to you. I know some of you say, well, I want to show less confidence because sometimes when I show more confidence, it means I'm not liked. And that's something called the likability penalty. We may not get into that a lot today, but there is a book on that called Likeable Badass. That would be a great resource for you. It's called the likability penalty. And you can Google that and some great resources will come up for you. And so I'm glad that you brought that up in the chat. I do address it in my book, chapter 3. We talk about it pays to be yourself and the likability penalties. Finally, this is profitable for organizations because when they have more women at the top, they have increased profits. Share performance is better. Creativity is better. All of these things are better when there's more women at the top. However, I don't want to breeze past this because doubt and imposter feelings are real feelings. Tell me in the chat, how many of you have actually felt doubt or imposter feelings? Anybody? I know I have. I felt them this morning before this presentation where I was like, oh, I hope I have everything good for today. I hope they like it. What if they think all my examples are stupid? Like, I just want you to know that this is normal. And, one of the things that I really try to work on with my clients is I think with the rise of the term imposter syndrome, sometimes I wonder if we're relabeling our everyday, normal, healthy doubt as imposter syndrome. Because remember, y'all, doubt is a normal, healthy human emotion. We are going to feel it every time we stretch our comfort zone. Every time we flex that muscle and test that muscle, it's going to be stretched, right? We're going to feel doubt. In fact, there are real consequences for not feeling doubt. Tell me in the chat, how many of you have ever worked for somebody who could have benefited from a little more doubt? Anybody? I know I have. I worked for some folks that could have benefited from a little more doubt. Yeah. Because you know what? Here's the thing is some of my clients don't ever want to feel doubt when they do a thing because it just doesn't feel good. But I remind them that there are people in this world who don't feel doubt. They're called sociopaths. I watch them on Dateline every Friday night after my husband and I drink margaritas. And there's always a point in Dateline where I think to myself when they pulled the life insurance policy right before they committed the crime, where I'm like, gosh, they could have benefited from a little more doubt, right? But all joking aside, remember that doubt keeps us humble. It keeps us curious and it keeps us connected. I define imposter syndrome as a systemic issue, okay? It is a systemic issue that comes from not seeing yourself, someone who looks like you in the rooms where decisions are made. I see imposter syndrome show up when we continually doubt ourselves so much to the point that we're underestimating our abilities, our contributions, we play small, we continuously don't go for things that we're fully qualified for. And so ultimately, it becomes self-sabotage. There are so many more systemic components that comprise imposter syndrome that I write about in my book. Whereas we just have to remember that a lot of this just comes from doing things while also feeling doubtful. So here's the thing. I've had the opportunity to, interview great leaders that I'll talk about how this connection was made in a second, like Indra Nooyi. She's the former CEO of Pepsi, the first Asian American and female CEO of a major Fortune 100 organization. And if you read her book, My Life in Full, they talk about how Pepsi and Motorola and these companies would pull her all over and have her lead business units she'd never had led before. And so I asked her, I said, gosh, weren't you nervous all the time getting moved around? She's like, oh yeah. She's like, but you just learned how to do it while also feeling, doubtful and nervous. So here's the thing I want you to remember, y'all, when we talk and we think about Reshma, we think about the person that you popped in the chat that you admire. It's not that great leaders always feel confident. It's that they've learned how to lead while also feeling doubt. And so how do we close the confidence gap? Well, we stop using two of the most expensive words in our vocabulary, which is but first. How many of you of all have ever said, but first, I want to go for that job, but first I need to get more experience. I want to speak up and ask him for a raise. Oh, but first I need to go back and check my data one more time. Oh, I want to run for office, but first I think I need to go back and delete all my search history. But first, but first, but first, but first, right? Yeah, but first, the two most expensive words in our vocabulary. And if we can exchange that for two more valuable words, we can do those great things that you said you would do if you had a little more confidence. I'm helping a client right now run for office while also she is feeling like an imposter, unqualified. She's worried about what people think and she's feeling radically uncomfortable. But her mission of what she wants to accomplish is more important. You can give excellent presentations while also feeling like an imposter. You can go for promotions while also feeling unqualified. You can share ideas. You can challenge a presidential candidate while also feeling really nervous about what they're going to think and what they're going to do, just like Reshma did, right? And you can have courageous conversations while also feeling uncomfortable. We can close the confidence gap by exchanging two words, but first to while also. Because at the end of the day, y'all, if we wait until we feel confident, we will be waiting forever because confidence is actually a side effect of taking action. Jennifer, I'm seeing your comment, but first I need the time. That's the number one excuse. But first I need more time, right? What do you think you need time for? I know you're commenting for the whole universe of us who use that as a but first, because I know that one hits a lot of us. So thank you. We're going to talk about three more strategies today to help you bring together communities, relationships, collaboration. And I use the word leader a lot. But remember, you are a leader in any place you influence others. You don't have to manage people. If you are managing projects, if you are running things through a matrix organization, it's so much harder because you actually don't have direct reports. So remember that you are a leader in any place you influence others. So we talked about closing the confidence gap. Let's talk about how do we actually increase our level of influence in the organization. How many of you have heard of Padmasri Warrior, have heard of Padma? I'd be curious in the chat. Who do we know? Hopefully I'm introducing you to some women that might not always be on your radar. That's also my goal today, right? That we can start to become fans of some folks that we've never heard of before. So Padma actually grew up in India. She came to the US and she held leadership and technology leadership roles in Motorola. She was the chief technology and strategy officer at Cisco. She's been named to Forbes' most powerful women. She was the CEO of NIO. NIO is one of the most popular electric car companies in China, and they actually were trying to break into the US. And she was the CEO of NIO, and that's where I met Padma. So I was working with Padma's organization. And I was coming in to do some leadership training. And let me tell you, walking into Silicon Valley, working with an electric car company, all the imposter feelings and doubt, right? Like muscle aches, shaking. Oh my, I just thought that I was going to be found out. And I remember one afternoon we were working with Padma and her leadership team, and she brought in this leadership team from like Ford, Toyota. Like I totally had them on a pedestal. I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm going to be found out that I know nothing. And I remember the leadership team kind of got into this little squabble because they were really mad at their colleagues in China for not doing things the way they wanted them to be done. And so they were just going back and forth and getting a little like, catty with one another. Yes, this was a group of all men. And so Padma like calmly walked in and said, just because our colleagues are in China, it can be easy to think that they want different things. But she said, we're just all human. And humans want to be seen, humans want to be heard, and humans want to be understood. And so if we can put that in front of us, we can accomplish anything with them. So remember that you are dealing with a human. Oh, that advice stuck with me forever. Not in how she just calmed the whole group down, but like shifted that whole group's perspective towards humanity and relationships. So it's not going to surprise you that Padma left NIO, and she actually started her own company called Fable. Fable is like an ebook app, so think Kindle, except for it has communities built in. Oh, right. It actually has a chat feature filled in because one of the things that Padma was passionate about was books and sharing books with people. And she found a lot of research that actually brings well-being. And so she started this company where you can read books like a Kindle app, But there's like a built-in community. So you can talk to people about this book online from anywhere in the world about book passages, what you thought about it. And she sold this company and did so well that she sold it off and, somebody else bought it. And that's where I reconnected with Padma. And because I joined her Women Leaders Book Club and we got reconnected. And the reason why I tell you this story is number one, she couldn't find what she wanted. So she built a community around something that she was passionate about. And because I kept this relationship with Padma, she actually introduced me to Ariana Huffington, who I was able to interview. That was really fun. And she introduced me to Indra Nooyi, who was the story I told you earlier about how she can lead while also feeling doubt. So this is the lesson that I want us to learn from Padma. Not only can we take brave steps and start our own community, but it is really important to maximize your influence map, to maximize the relationships of people that you are connected to. Not only through Padma was I able to meet Ariana and Indra, but she talked a lot about how we have to cultivate and build relationships in our organizations to get things done. So I'm actually going to give you, if you have a scratch piece of paper, a Post-it, the back of your hand, whatever you have, it doesn't matter. I want to give you a tool that I teach my executive coaching clients. And it's how to maximize their relationship map, their influence map is what I call it in the organization. Now, this doesn't have to be pretty, but I want you just to take a pen and your scratch paper and draw your best rudimentary org chart, okay? Put yourself in the middle. Make sure to have your boss. Do you work with any other senior leaders? Just put a little circle and put their name. Put their peers. Maybe put direct reports if you have any. Don't forget to put your matrix relationship and your lines to your key stakeholders. Now is not the time to make this pretty. I know that for the perfectionists who are listening to me right now, I know that gave you heart palpitations. We're just trying to get a visual of you, the people you work for, the stakeholders you have to work through to get things done. Maybe it's the board, right? You can just put the board in a circle, and the people that you have to work through and connect with to get things done. And then here's what I have my clients do. Now we start to label them. We start to evaluate the quality of these relationships. Red. Reds are people you can put a little R, or for those of you who are at your desk and you have colored markers, now is your time to shine. You can get out your red marker and note a red. A red is somebody who you feel like you are constantly in conflict with. Maybe you just feel like you always have differences of opinion. That relationship just feels strained. Okay, you can mark them as red or put an R. Then I want you to mark your yellows. These folks are neutral. You don't know where you stand with these folks, okay? Maybe they're new or you're new, you haven't met them yet, but you're like, this person feels important, but I just don't know where I stand with them. Mark them yellow. And then you're gonna mark your greens. Greens are your supporters. They are your advocates. They are your collaborators. These are people who you know that would say awesome and supportive things about you if you were not in the room with them. You know they are shouting your name, your projects, and supporting you when you are not present. After you take a look at this, what do you notice? What is the quality of the relationships in your organization based on who and what you need to influence? How many greens do you have? Maybe go back through and say, ooh, that's a yellow that I really need to get to know. Put a big circle around that person. And we're going to talk about some strategies before we're done today about how to approach that person. Maybe you're like, ooh, I don't have any reds. Ooh, look at me. And then I'm going to ask you, do you not have any reds? Or are you just avoiding them so they didn't make your chart? And as Jennifer, you're helping me out today. Only one red. Good news. But you know what, though? It's okay to have a red. I honestly have never met anybody that doesn't have at least one red. You know why? Because we work with people. And I hate to break it to y'all, but work is pretty easy sometimes until we work with people who like to work differently than we do. So here's some questions you can ask yourself. How do you need to show up differently? With whom do you need to improve a relationship or cultivate a relationship so that you can tap that resource, so you can get things advanced, so you can share your ideas? Because when we are leading change, when opportunities come, these things happen through the little conversations and relationships that are built across organizations, not because you sent a really awesome email communication, because they're probably going to be like, I wonder if she wrote that with AI. But if you sit in front of that person and you've cultivated a relationship, now we can have a conversation about what our goals and opportunities and challenges look like. Maybe, is there anything in the past that you need to clear up to improve a relationship? And is there somebody that you need to stop avoiding? My number one tip is, you know what, everybody has a red and definitely maybe a yellow, somebody they don't know. But sometimes our reds have good relationships with folks that are green to us. Can you use one of your greens to help fix the relationship with the red, right? It's all about how can we collaborate and build these relationships so that when opportunities come, we become the obvious choice because we have built strong relationships based on shared goals and values. And you're right, the messy conversations need to happen to get beyond the difficulties. Absolutely. Because what Padma demonstrated for all of us is that at the end of the day, what we're really looking for is we are looking for values-based partnerships. It's really common to say, well, I have my goals and they have their goals. Eh. Usually when we're working in organizations, we probably have some shared goals and values. Maybe we have some different ways of going about it, but instead of like butting heads, how can we both look towards what our shared goals and values are to cultivate a long-term, successful, and healthy relationship? All right. Let's talk about how to advance your ideas. I know I've been talking about other women, but I want to share one of my own stories. This is actually what my TED Talk is about, if that's something you're interested in checking out. But, you know, I had worked for an organization for 12 years, and about year 11, I found myself in a windowless gray conference room. Maybe some of you are sitting in one today. And, you know, it was one of those all-day meetings. It was after lunch. It started to stretch on, and I was kind of getting annoyed because we were hearing from the same voices over and over again. So we finally got a bathroom break. And, you know, in that break, I was like, oh, why am I getting so annoyed? And I started to realize that most of the voices we were hearing from were male voices. Because honestly, I worked in the field of banking for like 15 years. It was a very male dominated organization. So I asked myself, well, are there more men than women in the room today? There were not. It was about evenly split, although most of the senior leaders were men because that was typical. So I kind of got angry and I said to myself, oh, these women should speak up. And it's almost as if kind of those bathroom walls came in on me and they're like, well, you could be the one to speak up. I was appalled at this. Who am I to speak up? But first, I would need to make sure that I sound credible. But first, maybe I need to go get more research. But first, how do I rehearse and rehearse and rehearse so I don't sound silly? But first, but first, but first. I wish I could tell you that I walked out of that break, walked into the room, and shared all these mic drop moments. But I did not. I stayed through the rest of the meeting silent. But something had changed. I started to notice how all my nerves and doubts and insecurities kept me more silent than I wanted to be. I started to notice how I felt intimidated in the room by people who had higher titles or more charisma. And I didn't have a name for it then, but looking back, I realized I had a big problem. In my TED Talk, I call this a pedestal problem. Tell me in the chat, how many of you have ever put someone on a pedestal, thinking that because they had a higher title than you, more experience than you, more charisma than you, then they must know best. And therefore, your ideas don't matter. Yes, y'all, we see this play out in organizations. We see it play out in the world. We see it play out sometimes even just amongst our coworkers and our friends. But you know what? I had to work really hard to pull the pedestal because what I found was that I was just really intimidated by the hippo in the room. And the hippo is the highest paid person's opinion. But interestingly enough, y'all, it wasn't until I left corporate and I became an executive coach where I could finally start to pull that pedestal because all those executives that I had on pedestals, they started coming to coaching. Turns out they were looking for answers too. They didn't have all the answers. And so here's the thing I think that's really important to remember is, you know, when we have people on pedestals, it's easy to think that they know everything, that they have all the answers. And so sometimes we get advised to just fake it until you make it or just be more confident. But that never worked for me or anyone else that I know. In fact, if we want to pull the pedestal, we actually have to stop overestimating others' intelligence and underestimating our own. We have to stop underestimating that unique thing that only you can bring to a situation. And we can do this by owning your unique talents and gifts. When we own our expertise, the expertise that only we can bring, it's easier for us to see the talents of others without compare and despair. So how do we do this? I want you to think about what is that unique perspective and expertise that only you can bring. I want you to think about what is that unique skill, data, or talent that only I can offer? From where you sit in the organization, what can you uniquely see? Who else do you represent? I know when I was thinking about, several years later, when I was part of a merger and acquisition, I was sitting in California and it helped me remember, oh, I'm also advocating on behalf of the people sitting back in the home side of Omaha. Where do people seek you out for expertise? An interesting example came in this morning with from my book coach. My book coach tagged me in a post actually on LinkedIn, and she said that she had a meeting with one of her clients who is very well known, very smart. She said, I was just letting his intelligence just intimidate me so much. And then I remembered, oh, I don't need to be an expert on what he's writing about. I'm an expert on writing books. I'm an expert on book structure. I'm an expert on coaching. And when we can remember that expertise, we can come to the table as an equal. That's the goal. The goal is not to be higher or lower. It's about owning those unique skills and perspectives that only you can offer. It's about thinking like my client or like my book coach did. What shared values do they each share? Well, they both wanted to write a great book, right? And then how can she just sit and remain curious while owning, right, that unique thing that she can offer in the meeting so that we're coming to the table as an equal? This matters when we talk about building community. That's what you might be wondering. Where does this fit in building community? Here's the thing is if we have other people on pedestals, we cannot have a shared equal relationship with them. When we put other people on pedestals, we are we are less likely to speak up and share our unique ideas. And this matters because research at the University of Maryland and Singapore shows that women are positively affected and they gain more confidence when they saw other women leaders speak up, especially their direct supervisor. People are watching you. People who you don't know are watching you. And so that's why it's so important to speak up, because when you speak up, you build a little community for people who say, oh, me too. When Reshma started to speak up, she built a little community for people who said, oh, me too. When Padma spoke up and said, hey, I want to put a chat community inside of books, people said, oh, me too. How can I give you my money, right? When you speak up, you inspire other people to do the same. So I want to leave you with my advocacy model, because I think that this kind of answers the how. How do I speak up? And for the person who asked about the likability bias earlier, I think this helps answer the question is, how do I speak up confidently and in alignment with my values? And so I remember applying this model actually to writing this book. And when I sat down, I said I said I would never write a leadership book. But then when I did, I'm like, how do I not make it blend into every other leadership book? And so I really thought about authenticity. What is the unique thing that only I can bring? What are the unique stories that only I can bring? What are the facts that only I have? Maybe you're about ready to share an idea in a meeting. And so you can start to ask yourself these questions. What is this unique thing? The seat that I sit in, the facts that only I have. How can I sit on that? The next question I had to ask myself is, how will I say these things in alignment with my values? Because, when people speak up, it causes other people to react, and you can't control that. When I write this book, it causes other people to react, and I can't control that. But what I can control is this. How will I write and share and say these things in alignment with my values? How do I want to make people feel? That's what I can control. And so then I can write that way. Because that way, when they respond, which I can't control, I still feel good about how I showed up. When I'm coaching my executive coaching clients on giving feedback, we use this same model. What perspective do you bring? What are the facts? Okay, how do you want to deliver this, hard feedback in alignment with your values? How do you want to attempt to make them feel? Because we can't control somebody else's response as much as we might try. So you always need to walk away and feel good about how you showed up. And then the last one is action. I had to go through with my editor and ask myself some hard questions. What is mine to say? And what is not mine to say based on my values? Are there any clear asks that need to be made? If I'm sharing an idea, if I'm giving feedback, or if I'm asking for something, how am I being clear on what's mine to say or not to say, and what asks are being made? Tell me in the chat, where do you think you could use this advocacy model? I get the best unique ideas from things like this. Some people say, oh, I'm going to use it to give feedback. I'm going to use it because I have a board meeting next week. Tell me in the chat, how might you use this this advocacy model to frame your idea in coaching staff? I love it. Some people use it to write emails. Some people use it to, share an idea in the meeting. Some people use it when we think about crafting a project, one-on-one meetings. Yeah, absolutely. To write emails, I do it all of the time. I use this model to design this PowerPoint, right? Some of you might have to use it to help frame and shape an idea that you want to present to others. On a 360 that's coming soon, I love it. Introducing myself. It's a structured way to think through your own vulnerabilities and therefore what we can achieve. Yeah, absolutely. Awesome. All right. The last thing you might be wondering is, how can you use this model to confidently advocate your value at work? In the last part, in the action piece, maybe you're using the advocacy model to ask for a raise, to ask for more money, to ask for an opportunity. If you want to position yourself as the obvious choice, it's really important in the action piece that you demonstrate, how did your efforts help the company make money? How did you help the company save money? How did you help the company reduce risk? This is important sometimes for operational roles. Or how did you help the company lead change and innovation? And so when you can start to articulate these things, right, you can demonstrate your value. You can influence others at work. You can influence those on that influence map that you just built. All right, let's talk about then, how do we accelerate your career? Because at the end of the day, none of us really want to lead alone. And at the end of the presentation today, I'll just tell you now that I'm going to be talking about a community that I built, because I didn't want to lead alone. And I wanted to create a community that other corporate women didn't want to lead alone. So if you want to stay after and hear about it, you can. When I'm done, if you're not interested in hearing about it, you don't have to. And I'll still appreciate the fact that you were here. All right, tell me in the chat, have any of you heard of Joanne Robinson? Has anybody heard of Joanne Robinson? Okay, I hadn't heard of Joanne Robinson until last year, actually. Yeah. She's not a name that we hear about a lot, but tell me in the chat, how many of you have heard of Rosa Parks? Anybody heard of Rosa Parks? Yeah, Montgomery bus boycott, baby. Yes, right? For those of us who are familiar with US history, and I say that because I don't know if y'all knew this, we have women from all over the world on this call today. It's very exciting. In US history, Rosa Parks is known as somebody who did not want to give up her seat on a bus to a white person. And so therefore then she was arrested, and it started a wild movement. And sometimes we credit Rosa Parks, which she deserves all the credit, I am not taking that away from her, as desegregating the buses. Okay. But Kim is saying, Joanne was a behind the scenes sort of gal, kind of, yes. Okay. So Joanne Robinson was actually a teacher. And so she moved to Montgomery, Alabama to take a teaching position at Alabama State University. And while she was here, she joined the Women's Political Council and eventually became the president of the Women's Political Council. Well, what the Women's Political Council did was they advocated for causes in the local community that, uplifted people of color, that uplifted women, and just advocated for more equality. And so when they found out that Rosa had been arrested, they were the ones, it was the Women's Political Council that actually had the idea to do the one-day bus boycott in Montgomery. And so because Black people were the majority of riders of the buses, they boycotted using the buses. And guess what happened? That did not make the bus company owners very happy. And guess who owned all the bus companies? Old white men. Okay, they figured out at that time that they could influence old white men by hitting them where it hurt most, and that is in their pocketbooks. Well, this one-day bus boycott was so successful that it stretched on for days and days and days and months, and ultimately caused a huge financial crisis to those who owned all these bus companies. And so ultimately it caused them to then change their policies, but it wouldn't have mattered anyways, because this court, through all of the support of the Women's Political Council, the leaflets that they passed out, the community that they built, the advocacy that they built, it ultimately ended up at the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court ruled that segregation was illegal anyhow. But this all started because, as somebody commented earlier, the Montgomery bus boycotts, baby, right? It was Joanne Robinson who was the president of the Women's Political Council. It was a community of women who had come together to support one another and advocate for the changes that they want to see. And so sometimes we don't see these behind the scenes movements as much, right? We might see the figure out front, which is really important, that momentary act of courage. But how do we organize and find communities behind the scenes to support the efforts that we want to create in our own lives? And so I want to leave you today with a framework for this. There are actually 5 support networks that you can tap into. Remember that we started this presentation talking about how in the world of AI, we're constantly scrutinizing things about what's real and what's fake. But one of the things that we know that's real is our relationships. And so there are 5 networks that you can tap into. A lot of us look at our immediate network, right? We might look at our close friends, our family, or our immediate coworkers, and we may not look much beyond that. But a lot of my clients get job opportunities or, I'm thinking of someone right now here in my city of Omaha who is starting something brand new. She actually is starting a women's club, and it's like an in-person thing. And she's working through all of her acquaintances. Who do you know? Asking me, hey, would you introduce me to that person? We can't overlook our corporate relationships and overlook, right, the people on our relationship, our influence maps that are yellow or even red that we could rebuild and cultivate relationships with. What ERG groups are available. Some of you might be sitting in a room right now with an ERG group, and have you maximized all the relationships and networks that you can build in that room that you're sitting in as part of the ERG group? A lot of people overlook too the opportunities that can be found in their community. Maybe you volunteer or there's a nonprofit you're a part of, or maybe there's a religious or local interest group organization. I know people who have found opportunities through their run club. Okay. And then finally, I think a really awesome one is industry. There are so many women in blank. Women in manufacturing, women in electronics, women in ag, women in tech. There are so many industry organizations that are great places to network and find your next opportunity. Some women in power hide behind patriarchal systems. So Nasli, it's interesting. I'm reading a book about, it's called The Women Who Founded Omaha. And I didn't know this, but I live downtown. And so a few blocks away, there's this 5-story building that used to be this massive department store. Well, at the top of the department store in like the late 1800s, early 1900s, the women used to meet up there, and it was called the Women's Club. And it's where they would hold meetings to create advocacy for the suffrage movement so they could get the right to vote. So they were like literally hiding up there, doing their little thing, right? They've come together in these groups. Oh, and thank you for defining ERG. 93% of women, remember, say they find more opportunities with a strong network. So let me ask you all, okay? This is something you can pop it in the chat or you can scan this code. What network do you think has the highest potential and support for your future goals? Where do you think you need to tap into? I'd be curious. What does everybody think? Scan the code and vote, or you can drop it in the chat, doesn't matter. Industry, okay. Awesome. Immediate, community, corporate. I always love watching the polls go. A lot of you were saying industry. Okay. I agree. I've been part of and have spoke at quite a few industry conferences. Women in accounting. I'm doing a women in electronics this year. I'm doing women in food later this year. I mean, there's just so many. There's so many, right? Where you can meet new people, where you can network, you can find people who are doing what you need to do. I love it. So maybe start to think about what is your one next immediate action inside this network? How might you take advantage of it? One of the things I really coach my clients on is how might you set aside the dedicated time to invest in it? I know sometimes we think that the time will just happen, but it doesn't. Yeah, you can use them all. Networking is invaluable. I agree, right? Really well-connected people. And this is where a lot of this came up with is I have talked with thousands of women and I really observed, okay, who are these women who are just really well-connected? Like they just have groups in all of these different networks. I love it. So maybe think and take away today, right? What is the one network that you want to activate, that you want to tap into because there's potential there? And what is one tiny action you can take to do that? All right. How can you do it? Strategies my clients have used that I was telling you about earlier. One strategy a few of my clients use, and the one who is especially great at tapping corporate and acquaintance networks, is they ask for 30-30 meetings. Or it could be 15-15 meetings. And what these are is, let's say that we're going to meet for an hour. For 30 minutes, maybe I want to tap your brain on something. But for the other 30 minutes, you can tap mine, right? And we can do an expertise share, whether it's 15 minutes and 15 minutes or 30 minutes and 30 minutes. I had a client who was so good at leading change through 30-30 meetings. She would go in and she would tap expertise. And then when it was her turn, she'd also use that to influence change. Ask for introductions. I had somebody ask me for an introduction just yesterday. And I always think it's really important. Here's the golden rule for asking introductions. Please do not do blind introductions. Please email both parties and say, hey, Julie would like to meet you. Are you open to a meeting with Julie? Okay. Because sometimes not everybody can handle or every introduction is beneficial. So ask for introductions, but also make sure you're asking for permission for those introductions from both parties. Plug into your corporate events. Find your community affiliations. There's so many different social media groups or local things where you can find local people who are just as geeky about your hobbies as you are. And that can be a great place to plug into your network for support and growth. And like you all said, joining your industry networks is something that you all wanted to do as well. So at the end of the day, if you can't find it, maybe you are called to build it. I have lived by this philosophy, and that's literally how I left corporate and came out on my own. You know, when I first started in entrepreneurship, I encountered something called masterminds. It was these groups of new women business owners who were here to help each other. I'm like, oh my gosh, I needed this in corporate. I needed other women from other companies that I could network with and talk to. I'd have been so much more effective. Well, I couldn't find it, so I built it. And so that's another thing that, I'm going to talk about here in just a few minutes is something that I built because I couldn't find it. So today we've talked about four things. We talked about International Women's Day, giving to gain, the power of women advancing together. And we can do that by closing the confidence gap. We can do that by exchanging our but firsts to our while alsos. We talked about three other concepts. We talked about increasing your influence. I gave you the tool of the influence map so that you can cultivate stronger relationships in your organizations and build that sense of community. We can advance our ideas and build a community by speaking up in alignment to our values, because when we speak up, we inspire other people to do the same, and we have to come to the table as equals. That's how we can build mini communities around our ideas. And finally, I taught you tools to accelerate your impact, to tap into the power of your support networks so that you can advance to the rooms where decisions are made, so people will say things about you in the room when you're not there, and you can find opportunities that you may have been blind to before. So let me ask you this. What action are you inspired to take today? Of all of the things we covered, I'd be super curious. What are you taking away from our time today? You can answer in the chat if that's easier for you. If you're sitting in a room, you can scan the code and you can answer on the screen. What is one small action you are inspired to take today? What are we leaving with? And as we respond as a community, oftentimes it reminds us of what we talked about, and it can inspire other people to do the same, to speak up more, to take the next step rather than saying, but first. I love it. Expanding my network. I love it. Doing more networking. The influence map. It is. It's really, really helpful. Speaking up more, sharing ideas, reminding myself that doubt doesn't have to make me a bad leader. It makes me an emotionally conscious one. Yeah, I mean, remember, doubt keeps us humble, curious, and connected, right? We check one more time. We ask one more time. Reach out to someone first. Somebody said read Likeable Badass, and hopefully you check out my book too. They're good cousins. But no, it's a good book. It's a good book. Reviewing my reads, right? And figuring out where I have opportunities. Owning your perspective, right? What is that unique perspective that only you can bring to the room so you can come together to the table as an equal? Yes. Thank you, Christina, for pubbing my book. She's a green, right? She'll say my name in rooms that I'm not there. Review your red numbers. Ooh, I love it. Reach out to all your support networks and not just the convenient ones. Yeah, stop comparing myself to others. Remember, we compare and despair when we can't see that unique thing about us that only we can bring. Destroying the pedestals, using your resources. let's see here. Feel seen as the men in the company? Absolutely. Awesome. Well, you can keep these coming in, but I want to close this out. Like I said, if all of you will get the recording and the slides. However, if you were sitting in a room today and you didn't personally register for this because you're here and sitting in a room with your company, you can scan this code and sign up for the webinar. And then you're going to get a copy of this presentation. And then you will also get a copy of the slides. So yeah, if you didn't personally register, you can scan that code. And then I'm going to send out a copy of this and the slides. And make sure that we're connected on social media. I always love hearing from you. I love hearing your wins. If you hosted a watch party, I would love for you to take a selfie of everybody in the room and maybe share something you learned, or send it to me, tag me on social media, because I always love celebrating you too. I know last year when we did this, a lot of companies did some selfies and they shared a little fun fact that they learned or something that was meaningful to them. And so that way we can keep this message going and we can share with all of us and with our own communities and sharing these ideas of how we bring women together as communities. Thank you all for coming today. And like I was saying, when you can't find something, especially about a community, it could be time to build it. So as far as the International Women's Day presentation, I've given you all my tools and everything that I have. If you are interested in staying behind to hear about the community that I'm building to help women advance to the rooms where decisions are made, now would be a time to stay behind. If you're good, you're like, nope, I'm not interested in a community, you can log off. Thank you so much for coming, but I'm just going to talk about the community that I built, because as I was working with corporate women leaders, I realized that so many of them felt so lonely, because as you advance to higher levels of leadership, there's few of us, right? And we can't necessarily go to our old coworkers because now they're our direct reports. The dynamic has changed. And so I wanted to create a community for women leaders to advance together to the rooms where decisions are made. And yeah, Kira, I hope I'm saying your name right, says it's about the loneliest experience no one tells you about. That is exactly why I created the Clarity and Confidence Collective. And so what it is it is a group of corporate women leaders who also agree that it was like the loneliest thing they ever experienced. And so we come together twice a month. We have a coaching and training call the first Friday of the month. So we have one this Friday. And then we just have a connections call on the third Friday of the month. And in between that, we have a private community where we talk about all sorts of stuff. We talk about diversifying our career. This month, our theme is how to position ourselves to become the obvious choice. We can tap each other's expertise. We can ask questions. But really, it's all about, do you have a community of people like you to help you find clarity on your leadership questions so that it can confirm, your authentic leadership style, to help you stay brave and play the long game? And so I want to invite you to explore the Clarity and Confidence Collective. Again, it's monthly group coaching calls the first Friday of the month. We have just connection calls on usually the third Friday of the month. Every month I run a challenge where I give them tools just like I gave you today to practice their skills or to learn a new skill. And then we encourage folks to go out and practice it out in the real world and then come back and say, how did this go? How can we support you? In January, we talked about action over perfection. In February, we talked about building a multidimensional career, right? Adding another stream of income beyond your corporate job. This month, we're talking about how do we make ourselves the obvious choice for opportunities. In April, we're going to talk about developing compelling speaking skills. In May, we're going to talk about creating healthy bandwidth and boundaries, which is something that is really important to everyone. I'm just dropping a link in the chat. And then in June, we're going to do an Ask for Everything challenge. The topics are always chosen by the people in the community. And so I'm just about to poll the community right now to see what they want to talk about for the remainder of the year. And here's the thing is, and Padma, she endorsed all the work we're doing. I wanted to make it affordable. So it's $99 a month, and that includes the private community. That includes the 2 coaching and connection calls with me. It includes the challenge. It includes the monthly live that I do. It includes all of the tools and resources that I drop. And so if this is something that you're interested in, I would love to have you, and I would love to welcome you into the community. It is for folks who identify as women. It's $99 a month, or if you want to pay in full, a lot of members pay in full because we recognize that building community takes time. It takes time. And so they're committing to the full year. And if you do that, then I will shave a little bit off that and give you the $9.99 pay in full price. So if you are looking for a community, because you know how powerful this is based on the examples that I've been demonstrating, I would love to invite you into the Clarity and the Confidence Collective. Like I said, it's $99 a month, $9.99 paid in full. It's an awesome opportunity to get weekly tips, monthly live group coaching sessions, confidence and leadership building challenges. You get one-to-one connections with other members. And I'm going to be running a retreat in the fall in person, and they already got the first notice to get the discount on the retreat. So they do get access to discounts on my future events. So I'm going to stop talking. I dropped the link in the chat where you can find more information. And if you're interested in joining us, you can just sign up online. But I'll hang out a little bit to see if anybody has questions. And I'm just reading the chat. Thank you, Stephanie, for bringing Heidelberg materials. I appreciate it. Thank you, Carol. Anybody have questions about anything I covered, about the collective? If you love learning sessions like this, then I'm going to be running something similar this Friday with the collective. Like I said, we're going to be talking about tools to become the obvious choice for your next career opportunities. Thank you, Danielle. Thank you so much for coming. And I'm glad that you found the information valuable. Thank you, Maria. I'll hang on for a couple more minutes if anybody has any questions about the content, has any questions about the collective. Otherwise, I would love to see you in there. Thank you, Debbie. Thank you, Laura. Can you tell us more about your retreat? Yeah. So the retreat will be it actually has not been announced to the public. The collective is getting it first. It's going to be in person in Omaha, Nebraska at the very end of September. So if you're on my email list, Jennifer, which you are, I'm going to be announcing that publicly in 2 weeks. The other opportunity that I also run that you might be interested in is my leadership program. So if you're looking for something before September, the community is all about community, right? The collective is all about community. If you're looking for something more with leadership content, my Clarity and Confidence Women's Leadership Program starts March 26th. And so this is an 8-week structured leadership content program. This one runs $9.99, but it's 8 weeks. And like I said, it's structured content around everything that's in my book. So it's for people who want to accelerate, they want to find career clarity, they want to get clear on their unique talents, they want to set better boundaries, they want to shift from doer to leader. This program includes leadership group coaching sessions. It includes training offline, and then we come for group coaching sessions. We do an Enneagram number and leadership style report. We also do a unique genius assessment. So this will actually help you nail down what is that unique thing, that unique talent that only you can bring. So Nasli, you said as an AI student, I'm looking for a mentorship program. The collective might be more mentory. The leadership program that I run starting March 26th, this is definitely leadership development training. There's 8 leadership and confidence building assignments. And here's something fun. So women experience a 78% increase in clarity and confidence after attending this course. You can see the before and after results of my clients who came before. We cover the 8 core elements of clear and confident leadership based on my research. And here is what we cover. This program is $9.99, or you can make 2 payments of $500. So I dropped the link. There's more information there, but really, yeah, there's a few ways to work with me. You can join the collective at a more accessible price point if you want community. And you can join the Clarity and Confidence Women's Leadership Program if you're truly looking for a women's leadership development experience. This is my 10th cohort. It's my signature program. I only run it once a year. It's in March. And then more details about the retreat will be sent out to the public here at the end of March. Thank you, Lizette. I appreciate all of the comments. But hopefully I shared some resources here in case you want to learn more. You can access these 2 links. I'll send out a copy of this recording, and then I'll send out the slides and all of the links that I talked about as well. But either way, if this is something that you're interested in, I'm happy to answer any questions. I would love to have you in either one of my experiences. The collective, again, is all about community, coming together, support. And if you're looking for that more intense clarity and confidence women's leadership program, it's really transformational in terms of the experiences that women have had in being a more clear and confident leader. And that one really focuses on leadership content and on the spot group coaching and giving you tools to be more clear, confident, effective leader. And I've run that program 10 times now because it's the most transformational and rewarding experience. And so I'd love to have you in that as well. But we are at time. So thank you all so much for coming. I appreciate your time and your energy. And I hope that you go out, you share your ideas, you give to gain, and you build more community support around your ideas as well. So thank you all for coming. And I hope that we can stay connected on social media. Thanks, everybody.